A young American man living alone hears a woman praying in his house at exactly 3 a.m. until the voice suddenly says, "Jesus is calling you back." In exactly 35 words, there are no monsters, no sudden loud noises, and zero gore. Yet reading it creates an immediate physical sense of dread. It forces us to look at how such a brief piece of text manages to trigger a cold sweat without any standard cinematic tricks. Incoming sensory data bypasses the logical prefrontal cortex, routing directly into the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Mainstream horror uses brute force, overloading senses to instantly slam the alarm. Micro-horror hacks this through anticipation, quietly filling the amygdala with tension until the last second. The text terrifies us by establishing a strict routine and then violently breaking it. Dread happens when our brain realizes the rules of our immediate reality have been rewritten without our permission. The story begins with a young man living alone. Physical isolation changes how a person processes their environment. Living alone removes a psychological safety net. When you hear a floorboard creak in an empty house, there is no one else there to confirm if the sound was real or just your imagination. This lack of a shared reality turns the isolated person into the sole arbiter of truth. They are entirely responsible for their own safety, raising their baseline anxiety before anything even happens. Then we hit the middle of the story, hearing a woman praying at exactly 3 a.m. every single night. This is a passive haunt, an anomaly triggering at the exact same position on the clock every time, showing no active intelligence. Because it's strictly predictable, it feels manageable. We accept the anomaly and build a routine around it. This loop lures the reader into a false sense of security. We can adapt to almost anything, as long as horror follows a recognizable pattern. That setup makes the final clause devastating. The story ends when the established rules of the haunting shatter. The voice stops its passive repetition and addresses the man directly. The entity is no longer just a background recording. It is an active presence aware of its listener. In that millisecond, your brain registers that a pattern you had normalized has become a dynamic, unpredictable threat. The writer compounds the shock by corrupting a source of religious comfort. Prayer is typically associated with safety, but the phrase, "Jesus is calling you back," subverts that expectation. It functions as a direct, inescapable death sentence, spoken by something that has been waiting patiently in the dark. This shift forces the threat system into overdrive. The routine is gone, and coping mechanisms are useless. Horror hits when you realize you are no longer the observer of a phenomenon. You are its targeted victim. Looking at these 35 words as a whole, the efficiency of the writer's choices becomes clear. The fear lives in the transition point. The moment an unseen entity finally lets you know it sees you. This narrative structure weaponizes our desire for routine and predictability. It takes our expectation of safety and turns it into a trap. You can find these same triggers in blockbuster films, in thriller novels, and within your own anxieties about walking home in the dark. Effective horror writing bypasses the need for new monsters. It simply manipulates our expectation of safety until we inadvertently terrify ourselves.